Hi class, this is Hailey, and this is my vodcast on chapter 4 in short-term memory. I'm going to kind of flip through here. I dog-eared some pages about what I found interesting kind of as we were reading, in addition to my notes and my little side chart that I'm going to refer to here. It's funny that this week was kind of about short-term memory. It was interesting for me to read about. I'm really interested to read long-term memory last week because I feel like memory is definitely an area that I joke a lot about, that I suffer from being a mom and working a lot and all that. It's something that I feel I don't have a lot of sometimes. And I even found what I thought would be funny this week is I thought that my memory wouldn't keep up with me and I'd have a really hard time getting through this week's chapter and taking my notes and focusing and paying attention like we talked about last week. But I actually found this chapter to be one that I got through the easiest and comprehended the most on. But I do want to think and attribute most of that to another course that I'm taking right now, which is the Elements of Learning, which is also a psychology course at Fort Hayes, that we actually touched on some of this stuff in the past 2 chapters I read in that class about some stuff that talked on in here. The main one was the Broadbent and Treisman models of memory, when you're talking about bottlenecks and putting in that the bottlenecking theory and then putting in the filter and all that. I just thought it was kind of interesting that my mind automatically saw that and picked up on it and kind of recalled what those models were about when I was reading them in the book, and so I kind of got a double take to put the information in for both of my classes. Right, so going off of that, I'm going to start back in the book. The first one that I wanted to say it was just kind of talking about is that I really like that this book has a lot of tables and examples. Normally I've always considered myself to be more of a read and take notes, and that's helpful, but I've actually found that maybe my learning style has changed and that I really like the way that this text flows, and it gives us a lot of examples and exercises to do, which really helps me retain all of the information and knowledge in here. No, my first dog year was about that model that I just talked about that I connected to my other class. Oh, the first one after that was talking about proactive and retroactive interference, about how things we learned before interfering with what we learn now, or things we're learning now interfering with what we learned before. And that's something that I actually put to use in my life daily, and that is because I have a really difficult time separating if I study different subjects in the same day. I feel like it just overloads my brain and I can't work with it. So even like this semester, I'm taking 4 different classes that are all related to social science and psychology, but I try to dedicate one day to each of them. I try not to overlap too much because it can make me really confused, especially if I read a chapter from one book and then read a chapter from another book, and then I go to take a test. It just kind of overlaps, makes me think of different things or makes connections that really aren't there, even though this week it did seem to help me out when it came to those models that I talked about earlier. The next was when we were getting into the central executive. So the central executive and then all the long-term memory and the slaves off of it. And we were and it was talking about suppressing impulses and decreasing anxiety was a big thing. So talking about taking off our workload and how our brain focuses on one thing instead of another. And I think anxiety with testing is something I struggle with a lot, and that might have actually helped me this week because I knew that I had a lot of homework to do when I got home from work today, but I just kind of told myself that it is what it is. I'm just going to put my mind to it and do what I can, and I actually feel like I retained this chapter very well. And then it was also talking about texting and driving, which is something we talk about a lot in the world and something that I see a lot, but just how too much overload at one time can really mess you up. And I don't like to text and drive because for my job, I drive a big pickup truck and a 14-foot trailer. So I'll obviously if I'm not paying attention, it's very easy for that situation to go wrongly. Also, cell phone use in general is something that I talk a lot about. I actually had to have a conversation with a potential client the other week. They were very upset that I hadn't had the time to call them back, and I tried to kindly explain that when I'm doing my job or when I'm driving, I do not use my cell phone, and that is because I do not want to be distracted and make a mistake. I don't know, for whoever read my introduction, I'm a dog groomer, so for me, I'm working with a lot of sharp objects. I'm around a animal that doesn't necessarily always want to sit still or cooperate, so being distracted by talking to somebody on the phone, even though that doesn't seem very distracting, that 5 seconds that I'm giving them my attention and not focusing 100% on what I'm doing can be very detrimental. The next was, I really enjoyed reading about the phonological loop. I really just I like learning about things about when it comes to language and vocabulary. I have a toddler, so these are things that I think about and apply to her as she's learning her words, which is kind of crazy that at 2 she could, say 15 different words one at a time, and now she's 2.5 and she says sentences, and sometimes I think she's smarter than I am. But also, I thought it was really interesting to talk about how different language acquisitions too, because my husband is bilingual. He speaks Spanish was his first language, and he learned English later on, and that's something that we really want to teach to our kids as well. So it was interesting to read how one might be easier to remember than the other, because even though we don't speak it a lot to our toddler, there are a couple words that she's actually learned to say, and it would make sense why she would say them. Some people have told me, oh, if you're teaching your kid to be bilingual, you have to be careful what you teach them, or, which words, because they might go back and forth and kind of have that Spanglish effect. And then my last dog here too, which I thought was talking about working memory training. It's funny because I like to do those Sudoku puzzles because I feel like it's making my brain focus and somehow makes me smarter. But you see a lot of advertisements for that kind of stuff. When I was a kid, we used to have these little flip cards. They're like Brain Quest, Brainy something. And it was basically to drill your mind and help make you smarter. Even though after reading that, it kind of makes me feel like a waste of time because yes, I am training my brain to focus and hone in on something, but that doesn't mean that because I focused it to learn how to put 9 numbers in a box that's going to transfer over to having better memory throughout the day when I'm sleep deprived or when I'm studying for my psychology test. So that is my wrap up and review of chapter 4, short-term memory.